Welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Angel Acosta. I am blessed to be with Dr. Betty Uribe, someone that I deeply respect in the field, and to be honest, my business coach, in full disclosure. Dr. Uribe, first of all, thank you for taking the time to be part of this gathering and this conference exploring capacity building. Your background as a business leader and entrepreneur in the banking world, but also just in commerce and more broadly, just in building enterprises has been really inspiring. I've been grateful to be able to be a coachee of yours and building my own kind of acumen and business intelligence. So just wanted to check in with you and get some insights around capacity building for the community. One of the first things that I wanted to ask you is one, how are you doing? And then two, like how, I'm just really struck by your trajectory. Like how did you just progressively just get more and more capable of arriving at where you are now?
That's a really good question. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you, Angel. Anything that you are part of, you are such a value-centered, ethical, integrated leader that for me, it's just been such a pleasure, not only knowing you, but being a small part of what you're doing. And you're up to some big things, and everything that you're doing is just so beautiful that anybody would be crazy not to join you. So to answer your question, I've spent a lot of time really working on myself. And not just in the academic piece, because the academic piece kind of speaks for itself, but I feel like when I first discovered what my natural gifts were, it's funny because it takes time for you to just kind of walk into and really own the gifts that you have been given. And so when I started, and it was a long time ago, I took a Strength Finders, and then I got certified, and I started really understanding what it's like to have my own genius, and the fact that everybody has their own genius, in that if I work on my strengths, that my throughput is going to be exponentially higher than if I work on my weaknesses to get them to be in the middle. And so when I realized that in my own personal learning journey, it had nothing to do with my studies. It was in my personal learning journey. That's when I think my exponential catapulted growth went. The other piece is not being afraid. Very recently, I had an opportunity to be with ex-President Fox and with a dear friend of mine and his wife, and we were doing some things, and so I just went up to him and I just shook his hand and I said, Mr. President, you and I are going to be working on this project together, and you didn't know this because this just happened. And he said, "Oh, you are? Are you part of this?" I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Go talk to my wife." And so she sent me a text yesterday on my way back, and here we are. And we're going to be doing a project together. I wasn't afraid. I was just very convicted because I know that I've got that genius, and I know that I can do a really good job for different countries around the world in this particular sense. So, and this is something that's completely outrageous, right? It's just a real clear example, but being in the room with whomever, and I remember my mother, and I think your audience should know that I am an immigrant from Colombia, and they should know that I came here with nothing. And at the age of 12, I cleaned houses and babysat, and my mom worked in a factory. So I didn't, I didn't grow up here in the United States. In Colombia, I grew up with a silver spoon, but my father was an alcoholic, so that brought us here. And he left alcohol later. But so starting with nothing and being able to have that trajectory, it has been on purpose. It wasn't an accident. None of this has been an accident. It's been by design. So I have always looked for mentors. My first mentor, I was making $2,000 a month as a banker, and I asked the CEO of a bank to be my first mentor. And I remember going to his office and saying, someday I'm going to be the CEO. Can you get me into your head? Can you help me think? And he said, what do you mean? I said, can I come to your office and spend a day with you? I don't know where I got that from, but I just asked him. And so I went to his office and I looked at his desk and I said, can you walk me through all of these pieces of paper? What are you looking at? Walk me through your agenda. I've been very, very curious. And I wasn't afraid to ask the CEO of a bank to be my first mentor. And then I haven't been afraid ever. And you know, being afraid and doing it anyway, that's the other piece. I've done that so much that now I lean into fear because I know what's on the other side of fear. And so I think all of us have the little, I call it the committee that says you're not good enough, you don't have the status, you don't have the title, you don't have, we're gonna be there at every step of the way, no matter what, because we get to the top of a paradigm and then we start at the bottom of the next one. So now it's another one. And then again, then you'd have to start again. So continuously leaning into that fear.
Mm, mm. I just want to acknowledge you being in front of President Fox, former president of Mexico, and just kind of just going up to him and just saying, we're going to work together. So I just want to acknowledge how bold that move and just how significant Fox was in Mexican political history. Well,
Huge.
I lived in Mexico. I think Calderon was president when I was there.
Ah,
I'm very aware of Fox's influence.
oh yes,
But
huge.
yeah, I'm just really struck by your fierceness. Um, your one thing that I've noticed about you, Dr. Uribe, is your strength in negotiation and just to respect time as well and give just everybody a potent and dense opportunity to get to know your brilliance. When it comes to capacity building, right now, as we're kind of exploring the concept and its history, what we're moving into across the next several decades, as you know, with AI and all the different challenges that society is experiencing. At the core, negotiation, how we negotiate, not just like in jobs and businesses and contracts, but how we negotiate boundaries in our lives and maybe even with ourselves is going to be key. And so, if I needed help with negotiation, well, you're one of the first people that I think about. Any thoughts around how you've navigated increasing your capacity to negotiate for yourself? And you can go, in the broadest sense, but specifically in terms of business, but also like yourself too in relationships. Like any thoughts there?
I think we need to know our boundaries and we need to be able to have the opportunity to sit in the other person's shoes. And you've experienced that in conversations you and I have had. When the negotiations don't happen at the negotiation table. In contrary to popular opinion, then the negotiations have already been done. By the time you come to the negotiation table, the person on the other side either feels good about negotiating with you or they don't. And so, what I always focus on is what do they need? What is it that they're looking for? And how can I get that for them and create a win-win? And so I negotiate win-win and I negotiate long. I don't think even in my divorce, when my daughters were 2 and 4, I was talking to their father, and this will give you an idea. And I said, today we're talking, but tomorrow you're going to be giving our daughter away. Do you want to be called to give her away, or do you want someone else to do it? Do you want to hold the baby when they have their first baby, or do you want someone else? The same thing in business. Do we want to shake hands with this person and do we want them to go out and tell the world, oh my gosh, I sat at the negotiation table And we created such a win-win that I'm coming back to this person. And I really want to do business with Angel Acosta because he is an integral man, integrated. He is a balanced person, and he really genuinely cares about my company. He's not just in it for himself. And so, what do we want people to say about us? And what do we want to happen 5 years from now? So, we're negotiating not just for today. Even when I go for a job, when I used to go for a job, now I don't. But when I go for a contract, when I'm talking to a potential client, I want them to think of me. Either I'm going to be a referral for them, or I'm going to be their client, or they're going to be my client, but we're going to do something together. So I think bigger picture, if I was negotiating something for a country and it had to be in a country in Africa, and I talked to the people and I said, look, you need to leave the tools so that the people can actually learn how to do this on their own. You can't just take everything. Let me put it to you this way. And so I put them in that person's shoes, in the individual shoes. And then I was able to put myself in their shoes. And I said, why don't we stair step it so that you could get this and this and this? And they're like, we can do that. So getting creative by sitting in the other person's shoes, no matter if it's my husband, if it's my child wanting to get out of bed in the morning or when they were little, you're either being negotiated or you're negotiating in life. It's all about negotiation. And so, do you want that to be an opposing conversation, or do you want that to be a collaborative conversation with friends? And foes are friends. I rather have friends all the way.
Indeed, indeed. As I hear you, and I'm also thinking about just all the conversations we've had over the last like 3, 4, or 5 months, both as your coachee and then I'll just as a friend and colleague, just talking about stuff outside of business.
Yeah.
Um, and what you said about negotiation and the long game, I'm struck by how much capacity building is also, the kind of capacity building we need for the next, several decades is yes, negotiation, but in light of what you said about thinking long term,
Yes.
imagination, and just some last thoughts around how you've imagined your way to this moment, where you're a trailblazer. Like, are there any practices? I know, that.
Yes.
Or yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. I was a gymnast,
Mhm.
and I remember before I got my first aerial, and if you know what an aerial is, it's a cartwheel without hands on the ground. So you instead of putting my hands here, I go like this, and then I go in the air and I do the cartwheel without hands. So before I got my first aerial, that's an aerial, I remember my coach, Cindy Gasky, was my coach in high school. And I remember her saying, you have to imagine yourself being there. You have to just feel your body going around your head, and you have to imagine you landing it. Landing it means you come down and you just are firm when you land, not wobbly, but just really firm. And you just have to figure you see yourself there. I remember when I asked Tom Timmons, who was the CEO of this bank in Orange County, and I said, would you be my coach? Would you mind mentoring me? Not my coach, my mentor. And I asked him when I became a market director or a regional director at a major bank in Southern California, I asked Tom to come and talk to my team. And he came and talked to my team, and I elevated my team. I knew that I couldn't do this without my team. So I've always focused on elevating everyone around me. The cleaning people, the people who open the door in the front of the building. It doesn't matter. I elevate everybody. And so I remember saying to him, get me through your head. Help me understand how you think. In even Lynn Pike, who was my divisional director at Wells Fargo when I was her strategy director, I came to her because she had that imagination. And I said, can you get me in your head? How do you think about all of these things? And I remember her saying, okay, Betty. And she stood up like I'm standing up right now. And she stood up and said, okay, imagine you're over this whole situation and you're able to see the different contingencies as a map. And now you're able to put the pieces together and connect the dots. And I thought, that's how you do it. You get above it so you can see it. And so Michael Gerber, if you know who Michael Gerber is, he wrote E-Myth, which is a fantastic book. He became a dear friend of mine. And he talks about being on the business versus being in the business. On the business, I'm above it and I can see it. It's just like any situation. If I'm able to see it from above without putting my personal feelings, then I can see everybody and are the contingencies. If I'm in the business, I get caught up in the minutia and my feelings and my emotions and everything I can't see. You can see it from a helicopter view better. So those things are really important. For me, I have always had mentors that are much higher than the level that I'm at. Today, my mentors are, and I have different mentors for every part of my life. And that's one thing that, when you look at holistically at somebody's life, this is what I do is I have a king that is a mentor of mine, and he's mentoring me on going after in leading in that arena. I have CEOs of companies. I have generals from White House, Pentagon. Those are my mentors. And some of us are reverse mentors because I'm also mentoring some of those generals that are coming off so that they can understand what the world is like outside of the military after being a general. That's all you know. I also have young people that are mentors because they're the ones that are teaching me, and this is why I'm moving my company to AI and all of the latest technology. I have mentors for social media, for being a great mother, for my spiritual life. I have great mentors for that also, for exercising, for eating healthy, for you name it. I have mentors for every single area. Why? Different ones. Because I choose to have the best in each one of them. And nobody is the best at everything. So I make sure that they are far above where I am so that it's a big stretch for me because I love stretching. It's fearful to stretch as much as I do, and it is so rewarding on the other side.
Yeah, well, that's powerful. I'll take that in. It took me so many different places, and this is going to be part of a longer conversation with you. So we'd love to find other times to interview you and have you part
Of
of
course.
um, just mission and vision, which you already are in the background in a way. But just wanted to thank you for taking your time to bless us, and I'm sure that the folks that are part of the conference will appreciate your wisdom.
Absolutely. It's truly my pleasure, Dr. Acosta. For me, it's truly an honor to know you and to be part of your circle. And anything that you need ever from me for the rest of your life, I know that we're going to be here
Yes.
forever. So, absolutely, my pleasure.